I think that the idea for me, at least coming from the fine art world, is to like not cater to the people who are going to flip your work or whatever, but it's to cater to the people who actually love the work. And so the people who are holding it, I want to reward them.
Matt, what's happening, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing really well, man. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm good. Who we got lined up today?
Really excited for our guest today. We've got Ryan, ThankYouX, who is, a really important voice in the NFT community. He started as a street artist in the streets of Los Angeles, spray painting stencils in homage to Andy Warhol. Made his way into the fine art world with mixed media cube paintings that are kind of the hallmark of his style, which he's then brought into the NFT space in collaboration with artists like J.N. Silva. And, as mentioned, he has really emerged as kind of like a super credible voice in the space, supports up and coming artistry and keeps it real.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it was really awesome to hear him in this podcast because I think it definitely has a really unique history of art across different domains before really entering into the world of NFTs. And I think he's bringing the same level of enthusiasm and innovation into the world of NFTs. It was really loved hearing him talk about his loyalty NFT airdrop, where he effectively was able to give a reward to people that were holders of his previous releases. Really loved him talking about his upcoming drop, Convergence, that'll be dropping on Nifty Gateway this week on April 23rd. And I think he's just truly like special energy, special person, special artist, very creative, very unique approach to everything that he does. So really excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. One last thing before we jump into this week's episode, do really want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. Once a week, we're sending out some of our kind of top takeaways, commentary, different things that we're seeing in the world of NFTs from different creators, collectors, and technologists. So if you want to stay in the loop, definitely just head to nftnow.co and sign up there. But without any further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Thank you, X.
Ryan, how's it going, man? Great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. I'm very excited. Got my microphone ready. Let's go.
Gotta have the mic, man.
Love it. Well, I know we had a chance to talk, a week or so back. I love all the art, first off, that you have, on the wall behind you. I know you've got a good story around that Paul McCartney piece. So I figure we could share that with our listeners if you're down to chat about it.
Yeah. So that Paul McCartney piece, I actually made for Paul McCartney. So his team commissioned a piece of him when he was younger. And, that's the piece. I actually made two of them because I was like, oh, if I'm doing one for Paul, I got to keep it for the memories. And so, I made one for myself. And then, like I was telling you, Matt, like I ran into him probably, I think maybe 8 years later. And, he like remembered me and remembered the piece. And it was like, pretty surreal experience. I was with like one of my collectors at lunch and bumped into him in LA and it was just wild. Yeah. So Paul McCartney, it's like one of those things where like you meet Paul McCartney, then you sell him an art piece. And then like the first person I wanted to tell was my dad. Yeah. And then like my dad was equal parts extremely excited for me and also extremely jealous and kind of like upset that he didn't get to meet Paul McCartney. So I was like, he was like very stoked, but also like, how did you get to me? Kind of like, but overall he was very happy.
Tinged with jealousy, right? Just a little bit.
Yeah. But I got my dad like an autographed lithograph version. Cause so what they did is they ended up asking me after I made them, they ended up turning them into the tour lithographs afterwards. So they called me or emailed me and were like, hey, can we use these for this tour? And it was called the On the Run tour or something. And I was like, yeah. And I didn't get any extra money for it. They like weren't offering, but I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to argue because the second I come in with like some weird demand or something, it's just going to be like, never mind, And so I just like, yeah, that's totally all great. And so, I got my dad like an autographed version, like lithograph from the tour. And I got my dad like tickets to the tour and stuff like that. So it was cool.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's
like one of my prize like situations that's ever happened to me. Cause like it's A, Paul McCartney, B, I got to like, it was the first time like my dad ever was like, oh, you're an artist that is like a real artist. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just like a hobby anymore kind of situation in his eyes,
That's awesome, man. And I mean, it's cool to see how your career and journey as an artist has just continued to progress with regards to not only your kind of own creative expression, but legitimacy. Really cool to see how you went from kind of fine art, street art worlds and really been navigating the NFT landscape. So would really even love just to have you kind of talk us through that story as well. Like having been experienced and having created art for a while in more like quote unquote traditional means, and then venturing into the world of NFTs, kind of what was kind of the first moment and how did it really progress into what it is today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, I don't think people often understand this, but like my background is actually design and digital art. So I come from like the graphic design world originally. I got heavily into street art in like, my younger years. I was doing like, terrible trash graffiti. I grew up in like a suburban area where like, if I would like sneak out when I was younger, go do like some graffiti. My mom would call me later that day, be like, did you do this? I see what you're drawing in your room. And this looks like what you're drawing in your room. It was like, no one else was doing it in my city. And so like, she knew it was me. And so like, I would get in trouble just by my mom, basically. But I always had that like passion for like the thrill of like sneaking out and doing something illegal and, whatever. I fell in love with people like, Shepard Fairey, Black Rat, like all the like Invader, all these guys who were kind of like these like nighttime, superheroes that were just going out at night. And the next morning there was like a new thing. And that was like very exciting to me. And so I started getting into more of like the art side of it rather than just like writing a name or whatever. And so I would go around LA. And then I moved to LA years later. And I was actually doing graphic design professionally for a company called Bravado, which is a big merch company owned by Universal. And I was going out in the middle of the night, every single night, putting out art all around LA. And yeah, I just got that like rush back from when I was younger. That's how I really came up with ThankYouX, because I was putting up these big images of Andy Warhol. And I kind of just wanted to like come out and pay a tribute to Andy Warhol, because like obviously like so many artists are inspired by Andy Warhol, right? But like I wanted to come out and just be like, thank you to him. And so I just made this image and I put it everywhere and just wrote thank you really big underneath, and then signed it with like an X just to be like kind of anonymous. And this is like pre-Instagram and all that stuff. So like we were using like Flickr, our place of posting, and like all the artists would kind of like message each other through Flickr. And I just went by like X because I didn't really know what to go by. Then different art blogs kind of started posting my stuff and calling me ThankYouX. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll be ThankYouX. Like, that it's probably a better website to buy or something, like it's probably easier to go by that. And then like, it just kind of made sense. Like everyone's like, oh, that's cool. Like you're like a nice guy. And like, that's fitting with like your personality. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so, yeah, then I just did street art for years and years, and I wasn't like making money or anything. I just did it because I fucking loved it. And then, I got offered like gallery shows here and there, and then kind of got introduced to the gallery world a little bit. And that's kind of how I started like progressing more into like the fine art world, where I not stopped being inspired, but like I started being inspired by like a different group of artists. And I kind of started like, I did like art history backwards, where like, I started off in like not really backwards, but like, if you take art history class, it's like you start from the timeline and then work your way to like now. Right. But I did the opposite. I was like doing this. And then I like from that went back and started learning about like the Frank Stellas, the Cy Twombly's. And like, that's kind of where like, I was like, oh, wow, this is like, I feel this emotion when I look at this painting, and I do. So like, I wanted that feeling. And so that's when I started getting into more like the fine art element of it with like my geometric patterns. And, like I would do these big cube murals and things and paintings, and then like went full abstract. And coming into the NFT space, it was like, I've always loved tech and I've always obviously done art. And this was kind of like the first place where that truly made sense to put together, and not a graphic design element way. Like, not just like adding my art to a t-shirt or something like that. There was actually like, you could give this a story, you could give this a meaning, and like art is all about a story. And I really loved VR, years ago. And I thought that was going to be the means to like blend the two, which it was a little bit. But when I discovered NFTs last September, I was like, oh, okay. Like this actually is the first place where I can put like art and tech together, and not just like side by side, because like I was doing like, the offices for the Snapchat, for Snapchat when they first opened. And like, I was doing like events for Microsoft, like they would hire me to paint a mural. So I was always like working with these tech companies and I liked that. But then this was the first where I could like marry the two. And yeah, it just made sense for me.
That's great, man, and makes total sense. Now first having seen your work and now hearing the story behind it. I was exposed to your work through the Nifty collaborations that you did with the Jan Silva photographer, and I thought that was a really interesting collaborative series. Thank You New York, Thank You Miami, because it kind of paired the your fine art aesthetic with like photographic backdrops, and it was really interesting, like mixing of mediums. And so I'd love to hear a bit about how those collaborations came together and what it was like kind of crossing those mediums for those drops.
Yeah. So back in September, the way I found out about the NFT space was through my friend Chris, and he kept, explaining it to me. And then finally it clicked when I was like, oh, this is like CryptoKitties. I remember CryptoKitties. So this is kind of like that. And he's like, yeah, basically, yes. And it's more and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, hey, I want to introduce you to my friend, Jan Silva, who's also like this artist. He's a photographer. He's super into blockchain and all this stuff. And he linked us, and then it turned out that we were already following each other on Instagram. And I was like, oh, okay, I already like this guy's work. We just started talking, and we were all just kind of like in a Telegram group, just talking about the space. And like, I didn't see a lot of similar things to my art going on in the space. And he felt the same way, that he's like, there's really no photography element for me. I don't really know. And I was like, we should do something together, because it's kind of like, it's easy to follow a trend, right? But it's harder to stand out. And so like, I was like, well, maybe that's great that there's no one else doing this. And maybe we should be like the first ones to do this like interesting collaboration. So like, we had been connected with Nifty Gateway through Chris originally. So we were talking to them in, I want to say like October or November. They were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like, cause they had messaged me back in July of last year to like come onto the platform. And I never did it. But the funny thing was, when we talked to them, they were like, oh, that's interesting. We've never had anything like that at all. And okay, let me think about this. And they were like, actually, that's perfect. That's what we want. And so like the fact that they were like, oh yeah, this will be amazing. We were like, okay, great. Okay, we're not like alone. We're going to get support. And so we just went back and forth of like what that collaboration could actually look like. And then the first piece we ever did together was Avenue of the Americas, which was our open edition in December. And it truly, like, when we were like messing with ideas and like mocking stuff up and whatever, we were like, oh my God, this is it. Yes. And like, this is the first time we're bringing these photos to life. It's not just like a photo that's kind of animated. It's like, no, let's give depth to these photos. Let's act as if this photo is just like not a photo, but just a slice of time, and yeah. And then obviously from there, like, I think it was the day after our first drop in December when we talked to Nifty, and they were like, okay, when do you guys want round 2? And we're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, I love that as well. I think that you have also, I think you've also taken a really interesting step, which I think is sort of indicative of a greater trend in the space that I'm noticing. You recently dropped like a loyalty NFT to holders of your previous work. Would love to hear your thoughts around doing that, and if what sort of like what went into that decision, and if they're sort of like what that dynamic is.
Yeah. So for me, I've always been a fan of like supporting the people who supported me early on. And, it's what, April now, like, we are no strangers to this space, and people have been paying attention to us for a bit now. I personally still feel like a newcomer, just because I look up to the people like that were here, for a year before me, and, but to most people, we've been here for a bit. And for a lot of people, like, we were the first people that turned them on to NFTs in our worlds. And so I had collectors buying stuff in December from my like fine art world that were like, I don't know what I'm buying, but like, if you say I should buy this and that it's like a thing, then I'll check it out. And at the time it was like $200 open editions. And they're like, okay, I'll spend $200 buying this, whatever. And they're like, oh wow, I don't know what I bought, but hey, I sold it for $500, and they were like, oh my god, and I was like, oh, that was very poor choice of you. You should have held for longer, but okay. And I just thought that like the people who maybe didn't fully get it, or the people who did get it back then, either way, the people who were there for like the first drop, I wanted to like give back to them and just say thank you, basically. And or maybe they sold and someone else, was like, oh, I see an opportunity here. I'm going to buy this from someone, and I want all three. And I don't know, it's not easy to have all three, right? And so I wanted to give back. And at the beginning of it, there was 25 people who owned all three only. And then by the end of it, there was 51. So it was an interesting process. I was talking with Tommy about it from Nifty Gateway, and I was like, hey, how can I do this? He's like, okay, you just have to give me the names. So I had my friend Richard pull the data of like who owns what. And basically I was just like, how do I make this easy for Nifty so that they don't like tell me to screw off, And I was like, okay, so I gave him all the names, and then I sent Tommy the NFT and he did it. But I basically was like, this is like, now those 50 people have my first NFT as a solo, because like every other one is with Jay and Silva. And so like now only 50 people can own that forever, right? There's not going to be more. So that's my first one. And I think over time, that'll be an interesting case study. Because I don't know if anyone's given away their first like solo before. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I've done stuff before, but it's always been a collab. So, and then obviously I wanted to like make sure that it stood for what I was doing next, and kind of like act as like, a hint of what's to come. That being said, there's more rewards coming for people who own all three. Jay and Silva is also planning on doing a solo gift as well. So that'll come, I believe, this week or next week. And then we're going to just keep continuing to roll things out like that. They might not always be free NFTs, but there's going to be certain like access points and things like that.
That's awesome.
But I think that is the future, by the way. I think that like, I think that the idea for me, at least coming from the fine art world, is to like not cater to the people who are going to flip your work or whatever, but it's to cater to the people who actually love the work. And so the people who are holding it, I want to reward them.
I love that. And in that same vein too, I mean, even outside of maybe some of the direct stuff you're working on, I mean, it does seem like there's a lot more interesting applications and ways in which people are really looking at NFTs and the technology and ways of rewarding their community beyond just like one simple drop, whether it's having perks or getting access to some level of community or social tokens, or I mean, the list goes on. Outside of even some of your own projects and the stuff that you have in mind, are there other really interesting perks or different dynamics that stand out to you as far as how people have kind of innovated on like the basic NFT drop?
I mean, I love what Blau's doing. I think it's like very interesting because he basically threw this like at the top of his game. He's like, I'm going to throw out like a very wide net and put out this very low priced NFT. It obviously sold insane. And he's like, okay, great. Now that I have your attention, everybody, I'm going to like burn these into this other thing. And so like, I think like almost like gamifying it is interesting. And it just opens up like potential. He casts a wide net, but now he's able to be like, okay, yes, I sold like thousands of these. I'm going to melt them so that there's only like this many. So you can either hold on to like whatever you have, and those will go up in value potentially because we're burning the rest of these or melting the rest of these. And then the people who melt them now get this like unique thing or an opportunity for a unique thing. So I think it just kind of like, it's fun, number one, and it rewards people, number two. And I think that's great. And with this next drop that I'm doing, I am also planning like a phase 2 element where if you show up to the museum for the museum opening, then you become like a lifelong member, basically. And there's going to be like a bunch of different things that we do. Obviously, like the Mad Dog thing that he's doing right now is just insane as well. Like that's like, I think one of the most innovative things I've seen in space.
Agreed. I think it's such a cool project. In continuing that line of conversation, let's talk about your first solo drop on Nifty, Convergence, dropping on April 23rd. I know you've teased it with this loyalty NFT a little bit. Tell us the concept. What's the inspiration behind it? I think a lot of people are curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's the convergence of like digital world and physical world and like what that means, right? Like everything you see, even in the Jay and Silva drops, like with my cubes that are flying through the city or the paint splashing through Miami, like it all starts with with a physical element. And whether that's JN taking a photo of a physical thing and then me painting in my studio a physical thing. What I do after I paint something, I take a photo of it, we bring it in cinema, then we add the magic to it in After Effects, right? To animate it. So I like to think of like where that line is, like what point does it become digital art? Because like it starts with the physical. Does it like it like morphs into a digital, right? So like the idea is that I'm blurring the line of what that even means. Like, do we need to call it digital art, physical art, whatever? Like, is it just art? So I'm creating this museum that looks like a realistic museum. It's all digital, obviously, but all the paintings inside the museum and the sculptures inside the museum are something that started as a physical. And so if I take a physical painting and then I animate it, add it as a installation inside the museum, to me, that is an art piece still. It's not a digital art piece now. It's a physical art piece that I brought into this world. It's just an art piece, right? So that's the whole thing. It's bringing the two together in a way that's never been done before. The other main element of it, so for the auction pieces, the one-of-ones, I have 5 original paintings that have screens built into the actual painting. So the NFT is the whole thing. It's not the physical, it's not the digital, it's the whole thing. It's like, so when you see it, you're not getting just the screen, you're not getting just a painting. Like a lot of people have been like, oh, if you buy this auction, you get the painting with it. I'm like, well, you're getting everything. Like this is a digital and physical painting. It's both. And so no one's ever done it like this before. And that's exciting to me. When I was talking with Nifty about the idea of doing like presenting it as if it's like an exhibit rather than a drop, they were very excited about that. And we talked about different ways that we could do that. The idea of adding the screen came about, and everyone was very excited about that. And basically it's an infinite object that's built out. Like I built out a case in the back of the paintings. They're wood panels, and it lives in there forever, and it's permanently on, and it's part of the painting. It's like when Iron Man gets his chest lit up and that gives him life. It's like the power force to my painting.
That's awesome, man. Super excited for that. Everyone listening, mark April 23rd on your calendar, Convergence on the Nifty Gateway.
Check it out.
Oh, man. It's interesting because, as I mentioned, I saw your art before we got to know each other. And then I feel like it was on Clubhouse where we kind of first got to know each other. And I feel like Clubhouse has played like such an important role in sort of connecting and expanding the community that lies at the heart of the NFT space. And I'd love to hear, because I know you're really active there, and I think that you've done a really great job there in terms of like helping uplift other artists and aligning yourself with like the right drops and like and trying to make sure that it's credible actors in the space. And so I'd just love to hear a bit about your thoughts on like Clubhouse's role in drops and in the community, especially as this community continues to expand with new entrants to the space.
Yeah, I love Clubhouse. When I first got on it, I got on in April 2020, and it was just like a ghost town. One of my collectors is an investor in Clubhouse, and so he's like, "Hey, you should check out this app. You always like new things." And I got on there, and it was basically like a bunch of tech people who were like kissing Scooter Braun's ass, like like there's like 1 room or 2 rooms. And I was just like, dude, this is not my scene. And no shade to them or Scooter, but like, that just is not what I'm trying to like listen to, you know what I mean? So, and I have nothing to give or get from that conversation. So, I kind of tuned out for a while, and then, I would check in here and there. Cause I was like, I started seeing like some kind of like interesting, like testing of rooms that they were doing. And then I slowly would see like a friend would join. And so I'd start a room with them and just see what happened. And, at the same time in like September, I started getting really into like the NFT space and like paying attention in a big way. And I want to say it was like November, I saw the first NFT room happen in Clubhouse. And I was like, holy shit, like other people are talking about this. Interesting. And it was people I didn't know at all. And I believe it was like Lady Phoenix or something. And so I just started connecting and I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm in now. Like, this is like it. There's stuff that I want to talk about, so I basically was like, yeah, all in at that point. And then the idea of like building the community and, engaging. And I think their role would be, I guess they're just it's a connection place. It became like our own metaverse, and like we get to be on stage, even as we sit in Zoom right now, we get to all be in the same room. And I think that was like an important element. And like, imagine if this had instead of it like being recorded and then putting on on the podcast channels, it changed the element to where it's like, okay, cool. These people are listening live. There's no editing. Here's what it is. And it was just exciting. And you could talk about anything. It just happened to be that we were talking about NFTs like in November and then December. I tried to get everybody to pay attention back then, and no, like not a lot of people were listening. I remember like bumping into you, I believe in like, I want to say December, right? It's interesting because like we kind of were like, like I have my friends, right? And they don't care at all about like NFTs. So I was like, oh, well, this is like these are my people. Like these are the people that I'm connecting with. And I just started like meeting people like you, Lady Phoenix, like all these other people, like Ronan, like just like from this space. And I was talking to these people and you like more than I was calling, my friends or whatever. And so it really helped the community. And like, I mean, like we always say the term community, and it's like, it truly became this organic thing. And like, I think that when you're in it and starting like that thing, you don't realize what it is until like someone else points it out to you, being like, oh, you guys have like a little community that you're building. And we're like, oh, I don't know. We were just going, now I think it's almost like unfair to call the NFT space a community because it's like bigger than that now. I don't know. Like there's still obviously like the core, but like, everybody like Saturday Night Live does a skit on it. So like, how do you do a community now? You know what I mean? Like, even though, we all still stay in touch and it's all still like, we're all still like all the people who were there then, including yourself, like, obviously we're all still contributing, right? Like you have this platform that you're using right now, like to elevate artists and me and a bunch of other artists are elevating younger artists and buying their art and supporting them and answering questions in clubhouse rooms. And yeah, I mean, it's the most welcoming and open place I've ever been to in my entire life.
Yeah. No, I mean, the community side is truly incredible. And I think between artists, collectors, fans, I mean, everybody's so supportive of each other, so open with each other. And I think that creates just a very like strong nucleus. It's created so much momentum.
What's funny that like, because like you always join like another thing, right? Like Matt, when you were like in the music industry, it was like the music industry had been going already. And you just kind of like hopped on that train and found your place in it, right? Whereas this, we all like, we're like, well, we have to like, make the train go. You know what I mean? Like we were like the ones that were like putting the coal in the engine so that it could like get the train going, And so like that was,
we're the conductors.
We're the conductors, but also we're like, I'm the janitor, like I'm someone else serving the food. You know what I mean?
A lot of hats to wear.
I'm tagging the train from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
But yeah, so it was interesting. Like it was like no other thing that I'd ever been a part of, because it was like from obviously it'd been going before, but like the element that I was like contributing to was like this kind of like community element. And so like you just have to, it's like a startup without any sort of business, like we weren't a business. We just were like 24 hours a day being like NFT, and like you get to sit and talk to people who are like-minded and are also very curious and interested in like coming up with concepts that you could do and blah, 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 and inspiring each other and helping each other. Like very like, how do you set up a MetaMask wallet? What is a MetaMask wallet? And like getting people who don't understand that on board and helping them, so yeah. It's crazy. It's like nothing I've ever been a part of ever.
For sure, man. No, and it's exciting. So the subject, as we kind of come to a close here with regards to this, like us building the train. I mean, I think Matt and I, and maybe you, probably you, but like we're really excited about a lot of like the long-term potential of NFTs really becoming a kind of common thread and fabric between creators, really empowering the creator economy across different creative domains, whether it's artists, musicians, whatever it may be. What do you think are some of the big things that will be happening in the coming years that will be driving this adoption at a greater scale?
Well, I think that the music, and then probably some sort of like educational element. I think that like imagine, obviously like this gets talked about all the time, but like once touring opens up, the ticket sale element that can be an NFT of the ticket that then becomes like memorabilia after the show, or like paired with something that happens in the live show. There's like a QR code that if you scan it while this moment happens in the show, then you get an extra thing, and maybe that is as like little as like a discount code on merchandise or a free song or whatever it is, right? Like there's going to be all these kinds of different little play, like gameability type things to it. And I think that that's really going to be the time when like the music lane opens up in a big way. Cause right now all you're pretty much seeing is the art lane. And then everything that happens lives on top of that. So like whether it's art or music or whatever, like it all kind of like gets piled on top of like, okay, well, it's music. Okay, well, let's collaborate with an artist and go down the art lane instead of like laying the paths for this new lane and going down that, I think that the other lanes have yet to be built. And I think that I'm sure there's people building them. I know people that are like building like music only NFT sites with no art element and things like that, which are exciting. And I can't wait to see how that rolls out. But I think that in the next year or so, you're going to see a departure from the art lane from a lot of the other industries who are currently just don't know how else to get in.
1000%. No, I really love that. And I think that speaks to a lot of great points. And I think we're all really excited to see the community continue to grow. Well, really appreciate you coming on, man. You keep up the great work. No, we'll be crossing paths again down the line, but really thanks for coming on today, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I could go on for hours. You guys want to keep going? I got the mic.
We
charged up.
We need a freestyle.
There it is.
We'll do private freestyle unrlocked.
Yeah. The freestyle at the end. Tune in later. It's an NFT. We're minting it.
That's right. Exactly. Only for loyalty holders. You got to
only loyalty. You must have the Convergence NFT. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
Awesome, man. Well, we look forward to your drop. Best of luck with everything. And excited to continue pushing this space forward together.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm fans of what you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Let's get it. Peace.
Yeah.
Peace out, man.
Man, well, that was a great episode. What'd you think, Matt?
That was great. I loved sort of his closing thoughts on community. That metaphor he had about riding the train and wearing all the hats on it. It really is amazing how fast the space has developed. And I just he's always been so clearly a credible and important voice in the space. And it was really wonderful too to kind of hear his backstory, because as I mentioned, his art spoke to me before I became friends with him, over Clubhouse and the like. And it's nice to sort of see all the pieces come together and get a sense for like how he kind of developed and moved from street art to fine art to like now these really interesting mixed media collaborations.
Yeah, 1000%. No, love seeing that. Love his continued innovation within the market as an artist. Love kind of seeing the full circle nature. Obviously, he was doing a lot of like IRL art, painting, street art, but him just even retracing the story of his roots as a digital artist was really fascinating, and seeing how it's coming back around is really special. So I think he's going to continue to do great things, continue building and nurturing such a great community of different collectors, different artists. Really grateful for his contributions to date. Excited to see him keep building. So there you have it. Another week, another episode. Really grateful for your continued support. And you know where we'll be next week. We'll be back
right here.
All right. Peace out, everybody. Take care.
Take care.